At the family party, with everyone watching, my mother's voice cut through the noise like a knife. Get out and never come back. For a second, I thought I had misheard. But when I saw her face cold, furious, full of that pride she wore like armor, I knew she meant every word. So, I left. I didn't argue, I didn't cry. I just grabbed my bag, walked past stunned relatives, and stepped out into the night. Weeks later, my father showed up at my apartment, asking why I'd stopped paying the mortgage on their house. That was the moment I realized the truth. I had been their safety net for years, the quiet wallet behind their comfort. My answer that night shut everything down more than the party, more than the house, more than the illusion of family. This isn't just a story about betrayal. It's about freedom, consequences, and the cost of finally saying enough. Growing up in my house was like living inside a glossy picture frame that hid the cracks underneath. On the outside, we looked like a normal, middle-class family in the suburbs of Denver. Inside, it was chaos disguised as tradition. My mom, Linda, was obsessed with appearances. She cared more about how our family looked to the neighbors than how we actually treated each other. She loved to play the role of the perfect mother at church or at PTA meetings, but at home, she was controlling, dramatic, and impossible to please. My dad, Robert, was the opposite. He worked long hours at a hardware distributor, came home exhausted, and barely spoke. He wasn't cruel, just absent, too beaten down to push back against Mom. She called the shots, and he nodded along. If she wanted a new couch, he found a way to make the payments. If she raged at me for not being enough, he stayed silent, eyes fixed on the TV. Then there was my younger brother, Ethan. From the time he was a teenager, he rebelled against Mom's constant rules and criticism. Piercings, loud music, staying out too late, anything to escape her grip. Mom branded him a failure and constantly compared him to me. And that's how I became the golden child, by default. At first, I thought being the favorite was a blessing. I was good at school, loved reading, and worked hard. Teachers praised me, neighbors complimented me, and Mom used every achievement of mine as proof that she was raising a perfect daughter. But the praise never felt real. For every A on a test, Mom asked why it wasn't an A+. For every award, she reminded me that someone else's daughter was prettier, more popular, or already dating the right kind of boy. I learned early that love in my house was conditional. If I performed, I got approval. If I faltered even slightly, I got guilt trips and lectures about all the sacrifices Mom had made. Dad never defended me, and Ethan was too busy avoiding the storm to help. So, I kept my head down, studied harder, and tried to earn a sense of worth that never came. Looking back, I realized that's where the trap was set. I became addicted to responsibility, to proving myself, to being the fixer. And when the time came years later, when Mom demanded more than grades and achievements, when she demanded my money, my stability, my adulthood, I was already conditioned to say yes. College was my first taste of oxygen. Leaving home for Arizona State felt like stepping into a world where I didn't have to perform for anyone but myself. For the first time, nobody was hovering over my shoulder, nitpicking my clothes, my grades, or my friends. I could just be Stella, not Linda's shining proof of motherhood. I threw myself into my studies. Business management wasn't glamorous, but it was practical, and I wanted a career that gave me options. Between scholarships, part-time jobs, and the money I'd saved from working summers, I managed to cover most of my expenses. I even got to decorate a tiny off-campus apartment the way I wanted: cheap thrift store furniture, fairy lights on the walls, mismatched mugs that I thought looked charming. It wasn't much, but it was mine. For the first time, I had friends who liked me for who I was, not for the version of me my mom curated. We stayed up late cramming for exams, ate ramen noodles together, and laughed at stupid inside jokes. I even dated a little awkward at first, but it felt normal, healthy, uncomplicated. Every phone call home, though, was a reminder that freedom was temporary. Mom's voice never changed. Stella, don't forget who you are. You're not like those other kids wasting time. You're the responsible one. Or, when you graduate, you'll finally make real money. We'll be so proud of you when you can help out at home. She always said it like a compliment, But it landed like a sentence. Even at 18, I understood the undertone. You don't belong fully to yourself. You belong to us. Dad, as usual, stayed quiet in the background. Sometimes I could hear the TV murmuring when Mom called me, like he was sitting right there, choosing not to pick up the phone. My brother Ethan, on the other hand, barely spoke to me during those years. He dropped out of the family script entirely, drifting in and out of trouble, which only made Mom clutch at me harder. By the time I graduated with a 3.6 GPA and a job offer at a real estate firm, I felt unstoppable. My starting salary was more than I'd ever dreamed of earning at 22. I rented a one-bedroom in Phoenix, bought myself a reliable used car, and promised myself I'd build a life free of guilt and manipulation. But guilt doesn't disappear just because you move out. It calls you every Sunday. It slips into every family dinner when your mom brags about you, then hints that you should be more generous. It lingers in every text about bills, birthdays, and obligations. I thought I had broken free, but in reality, I was just on a longer leash. And soon enough, that leash would snap tight around my neck because in my family, success didn't mean independence. It meant responsibility. And responsibility, to them, meant paying for everything they couldn't manage themselves. The call came on a Thursday afternoon while I was at work, juggling a stack of property listings and trying to impress my new manager. I almost didn't answer, but the word "Mom" flashing across my phone made my stomach twist. When I picked up, all I heard was sobbing. "Stella, we're going to lose everything," she wailed. "The bank sent papers. They're going to take the house." I froze. For all of Mom's dramatics, this time it sounded real. Between hiccups and half-sentences, she explained that Dad had been laid off months earlier. His warehouse job, the one he'd worked for nearly 2 decades, was gone, swallowed up by corporate restructuring. He'd tried applying everywhere, but no one wanted a middle-aged man with outdated skills. Mom's part-time receptionist gig barely covered groceries. They were 4 months behind on the mortgage. "How much?" I asked quietly, already knowing I was about to make a terrible decision. $600, she sniffled. "And we don't even know how we'll pay next month." I leaned back in my office chair, staring at the ceiling. My savings wasn't huge, but it was something I'd built dollar by dollar since college. Money I'd dreamed of using for a down payment on my own home. Money that represented freedom. And now, I could feel it slipping away. That weekend, I drove home. The atmosphere in the house was suffocating. Dad barely looked at me, ashamed and defeated. Mom acted like the victim, clutching bank papers and sighing loudly about how unfair life is. Not once did she suggest picking up more hours, or selling the fancy furniture she'd bought on credit, or downsizing. No, it was my job to fix this. I met with their mortgage officer on Monday. I showed my pay stubs, my credit score, my savings account. Together, we arranged a deal. I'd pay the overdue balance and set up automatic transfers of $1,900 every month. My parents would stay on the loan, but I'd be the one keeping the house afloat. The officer even helped spin it as some kind of family assistance program so Mom and Dad wouldn't feel humiliated. They believed it. Mom cried with relief, hugging me like I'd just pulled her from a burning building. Dad muttered a soft, "Thank you," before retreating back into silence. I told myself it was temporary, just until Dad found work, just until they got back on their feet. But as I drove back to Phoenix that night, my chest felt heavy. I'd just shackled myself to a $1,900 a month secret. That was more than my own rent, more than my car payment, more than I could comfortably afford. And yet, I couldn't bring myself to say no, because that's what being the responsible one in my family meant. When the bills came due, I was the one expected to pay. If you want to know what 6 years of paying someone else's mortgage feels like, let me paint the picture. Every 15th of the month, $1,900 vanished from my account like clockwork. That's $22,800 a year gone. Add the $7,600 I'd paid up front to stop foreclosure, plus the emergencies. Mom always seemed to have car repairs, overdraft fees, a new appliance breaking down. By the end, I had shelled out close to $150,000. That was money I could have used for my own down payment, for vacations, for building a future. Instead, it disappeared into a house that wasn't mine, for parents who acted like they were entitled to it. And the worst part? Mom got worse, not better. Once she realized the bank wasn't breathing down her neck anymore, she started spending as if we were wealthy. New clothes every week, professional highlights every other month, manicures and facials at the clinic where she worked. She bought a massive 70-inch TV, then a brand new bedroom set, then invested in granite countertops for the kitchen. Every time I visited, she paraded her purchases like a queen, showing off her crown jewels. "Look at my new purse, Stella. After everything I've been through, I deserve nice things." Meanwhile, she was behind on the electric bill and I was paying the mortgage that made all those nice things possible. The gratitude I hoped for never came. Instead, the criticisms grew sharper. If I mentioned a promotion, she'd roll her eyes. Must be nice sitting in an office all day instead of doing real work. When I introduced my boyfriend, Daniel, her first comment was, "He seems plain. Don't you want someone who can take better care of you? Someone who appreciates nice things?" Daniel was kind, funny, and patient, exactly the kind of partner I needed. But Mom dismissed him instantly because he wasn't flashy enough to feed her ego. Over time, her constant nitpicking seeped into our relationship. Daniel grew frustrated with how much money I poured into my parents' house, how I turned down trips and dinners because I was broke. "It's like you're married to them instead of with me," he said one night before walking out. He wasn't wrong. I tried to cope by throwing myself into work. Promotions came first to senior property manager, then to regional manager. My salary climbed close to 6 figures, but with the mortgage payments draining me, I lived like someone making half that. My friends noticed. They teased me for driving the same old Honda, for declining vacations, for always saying I couldn't swing it this month. They thought I was cheap. I couldn't bring myself to explain that I was secretly bankrolling my parents' lifestyle. By year 4, the weight of it all started crushing me. Panic attacks hit whenever the mortgage payment cleared my account. Nights were sleepless after family dinners, replaying Mom's biting words. My doctor suggested therapy, but how could I afford time or money for therapy when I was paying for a house that wasn't mine? Mom's demands escalated further. She talked about renovating the master bathroom, heated floors, luxury tile, a rainfall shower. She spoke as if it were inevitable, like the house itself owed her comfort. That was the moment something inside me shifted. I had sacrificed 6 years, 6 figures, and countless pieces of myself. And yet, in my mother's eyes, it was never enough. I wasn't a daughter. I was a wallet, a lifeline, a resource to be drained. And I was starting to realize I couldn't survive like this forever. The night everything unraveled started out deceptively normal. It was a Saturday in late spring, and Mom had insisted we host a family party to celebrate my aunt's birthday. I dreaded those gatherings, plastic smiles, cheap wine, and Mom putting on her performance of perfect hostess, but guilt still pulled me there. I showed up with a bottle of red wine and a fruit tart from a bakery downtown. The house looked different again, brand new sectional couch in the living room, shiny appliances in the kitchen. Each item screamed money they didn't have, money I was secretly bleeding to keep the roof above their heads. Relatives trickled in, my Aunt Karen and Uncle Dave from Colorado, a couple of cousins I hadn't seen in years. Everyone greeted me warmly. "Stella, your mom tells us you're doing amazing at work, regional manager already." Karen hugged me tight, pride radiating from her face. Across the room, I caught Mom's expression twist into that sour, familiar grimace. She hated it when anyone complimented me. She wanted the spotlight on herself, not on the daughter who was quietly paying her bills. Dinner was awkward. Mom floated around the table with tight smiles, dropping passive-aggressive comments whenever the conversation veered toward my achievements. Of course, Stella works a lot, but she doesn't really understand what a real job feels like. Sitting in an office is hardly breaking a sweat. My cousins looked at each other, uncomfortable. I bit my tongue, as always. I'd learned long ago that defending myself only made her sharper. Then came the question that detonated everything. "So, Linda," Aunt Karen said casually while cutting her chicken, "did you and Robert ever get caught up on that mortgage trouble from a few years back? You mentioned it at Christmas." My fork froze halfway to my mouth. Heat rushed to my face. I'd never told anyone, but at some point, I must have slipped, letting Karen know I was helping out. Mom's head snapped toward her sister, eyes narrowing. "What mortgage trouble?" she demanded. Karen faltered. "Oh, maybe I misunderstood. I thought Stella said something about—" "Stella said what?" Mom's voice was sharp as broken glass. The entire table went silent. I could hear the clink of silverware being set down, the faint hum of the refrigerator. My chest tightened. After 6 years of secrecy, the truth was standing at the edge of my tongue. I set down my fork and forced myself to look at her. "When Dad lost his job, you were 4 months behind. The bank was preparing foreclosure. I paid the balance, and I've been covering the mortgage ever since." The blood drained from her face, then came roaring back in a flush of rage. "You did what?" "I've been paying your mortgage for 6 years, I said quietly, my voice shaking but steady enough to carry. It was the only way to keep the house. For a moment, she just stared at me, shock, confusion, embarrassment flickering like lightning across her face. Then came the storm. "You arrogant little brat," she screamed, shoving her chair back so hard it nearly toppled. "You think you can make us look like charity cases? You think you're better than us because you make good money? No one knows but us," I said, trying to stay calm. "It wasn't about charity. It was about helping." "Helping?" She laughed, bitter and sharp. "You call sneaking behind our backs helping? Making us look pathetic? Acting like this is your house?" Dad shifted uncomfortably, opening his mouth. "Linda." "Shut up, Robert," she snapped, silencing him with a glare. Then she turned back to me, eyes blazing with venom. "You've humiliated me in front of my family. You've been lying for years, pretending to be some savior. Well, let me make something clear." Her finger jabbed the air like a weapon. "This is my house. My home, and you are no longer welcome here." The room went deathly silent. I felt every pair of eyes on me, stunned cousins, wide-eyed aunt, even Dad sinking into his chair like a child. My ears rang with the words that had just been spoken. "Get out," she said, her voice low and cold. "Get out of my house and never come back." I sat frozen for a moment, my heart pounding against my ribs. After everything, after the money, the sacrifices, the years of silence, she had finally said the words I'd feared and half expected all along. And then, something inside me broke loose. Not sadness, not fear, something closer to release. "Fine," I said, my voice steadier than I felt. I stood, grabbed my purse, and walked past the table. Karen reached out as if to stop me, whispering, "She doesn't mean it." But I knew better. Once my mother made a declaration, she never took it back. I left the house without looking behind me. And for the first time in 6 years, I felt strangely, terrifyingly free. Back in my apartment that night, I sat on the couch staring at my laptop. My hands trembled as I logged into my bank account, but my mind was surprisingly clear. There it was, the automatic transfer, 1,900 scheduled to leave my account on the 15th, like it had for the past 72 months. 6 years. 150, 0. And all of it had ended with my mother calling me arrogant, humiliating me in front of my family, and throwing me out of the house I'd been keeping alive. My finger hovered over the cancel recurring payment button. For a moment, I hesitated, guilt tightening in my chest. What if they lost the house? What if Dad ended up on the street? What if Mom actually meant what she said? Then I heard her voice echo in my head, sharp and final. "Get out of my house and never come back." I clicked cancel. A confirmation window popped up. "Are you sure you want to stop this recurring payment?" "Yes," I whispered, pressing confirm. And just like that, the cord snapped. After 6 years of being their financial life support, I had finally pulled the plug. But curiosity gnawed at me. I opened another browser tab and started digging. Years in real estate had taught me how to pull property records, loan histories, and liens. Within minutes, I was staring at proof that twisted my stomach into knots. 18 months earlier, Mom had taken out a home equity line of credit. 52, 0. She hadn't mentioned it once. Not in her endless complaints about money. Not in her guilt trips. Not even in her tirades about how broke they were. She had quietly borrowed against the very house I'd been saving, using my payments as leverage for her shopping sprees. The list of renovations matched perfectly. The kitchen remodel, the bathroom upgrades, the deck. It was all there, every shiny new toy she'd shown off, every designer purse, every expensive appliance. Paid for with fake equity, equity that existed only because I had been paying the mortgage. My stomach turned. She hadn't just used me. She'd doubled down on the lie, building her fantasy life on money that didn't belong to her. Digging deeper, I found something else. Unemployment benefits. According to state records, Mom hadn't been working at the dental clinic for months. She'd been collecting unemployment checks while still pretending she had her receptionist job. Another lie layered on top of the others. I leaned back in my chair, a strange calm settling over me. For the first time in years, I didn't feel panic when I looked at my finances. No dread about the upcoming mortgage transfer. No tightness in my chest about another family dinner. Just silence. Just space. It was like finally being able to breathe. After years underwater, for a week, my phone stayed quiet. No calls, no texts, no guilt-laden voicemails. It was blissful. By the second week, the messages started Dad's confused, hesitant questions about the bank error, Mom's icy silence. I ignored them all. And, in that silence, I realized something profound. I wasn't their problem anymore. I wasn't their fixer, their safety net, or their secret wallet. I was free. It was a Tuesday evening when the knock came. I had just finished making pasta, the smell of garlic still lingering in my kitchen, when my building manager called up. "Stella, there's a Robert downstairs. Says he's your father. Should I send him up?" My chest tightened. I hadn't seen Dad since the party. I considered telling them to send him away, but curiosity and maybe a flicker of old habit made me say, "Let him up." When I opened the door, the sight almost broke me. Dad looked 10 years older. His eyes were red and swollen, his clothes wrinkled, his frame thinner. He stood in the hallway like a man who had lost everything. "Stella," he breathed, relief flooding his voice. "Thank God, we've been trying to reach you for weeks." "I know," I said flatly. "I got the messages." He shifted awkwardly, not daring to step inside until I moved. I finally opened the door wider. "Come in." He sank onto my couch, burying his face in his hands. "I'm so sorry about what happened at the party. Your mother?" She was out of line. "She didn't mean those things she said." I leaned against the armchair across from him. "Which part didn't she mean? The part where she called me arrogant? Or the part where she told me to get out and never come back?" His shoulders sagged. "She was just angry. You know how she gets when she feels cornered." "Cornered?" I let out a bitter laugh. "Dad, I've been paying your mortgage for 6 years. The only reason she felt cornered was because she got caught living off my money while treating me like garbage." He winced, the truth landing like a punch. "We know you've been helping us, and we're grateful." "Grateful?" My voice cut him off, sharp and cold. "In 6 years, not once did either of you say thank you. Not once did Mom acknowledge what I was doing. Instead, she criticized my job, my boyfriend, my life, while I was literally keeping her out of foreclosure." Tears filled his eyes. I know we failed you. But Stella, we're going to lose the house. The bank started foreclosure proceedings. We have 30 days. And you want me to fix it?" I said quietly. "Yes. If you could just start the payments again, maybe talk to the bank, explain, we'll make it right this time. I swear, your mother knows she went too far. She's been crying for days." I studied him, the man who had been silent my entire childhood, silent through every fight, every insult, every manipulation, and now here he was, begging. "Where is she now?" I asked. "If she's so sorry, why didn't she come herself?" He hesitated. "She's embarrassed. She didn't think you'd want to see her." I almost laughed. "So she sent you to clean up her mess again." Typical. His hands trembled. "Please, Stella, I'm begging you. We'll lose everything." I leaned forward, my voice calm, deliberate. "No, Dad. You already lost everything. You lost it the moment Mom decided her pride was more important than keeping me in your life." He broke then, full-on sobbing, his shoulders shaking. "We can change. She'll apologize. I'll make her apologize. Just give us another chance. You had 6 years of chances, I said coldly, and you wasted every single one. Silence stretched between us. He looked shattered, like a child caught in a storm. But for once, I didn't feel the urge to fix it. For once, I let the silence sit heavy on his shoulders instead of mine. Finally, I stood and walked to the door. This conversation is over, Dad. You need to leave. He rose slowly, his face pale. At the doorway, he turned back, desperate. What if your mother calls you? What if she apologizes? She won't, I said simply. And even if she does, it won't matter. Some bridges can't be rebuilt once they're burned. I closed the door behind him, and for the first time in my life, I felt the weight shift off my shoulders and back where it belonged. 2 weeks after my father left my apartment in tears, the messages began pouring in. First, it was one short text from Mom. Stella, please call me. I'm sorry, we need to talk. I stared at it for a long time before pressing delete. Then came another. Please, don't let the bank take our home. I'll do anything. Delete. Another followed, this time almost pitiful. I was wrong. You're a good daughter. Please help us. By the end of that night, she had sent 15 texts, each one more desperate than the last. I deleted them all. I'd spent 6 years shackled by guilt, 6 years bleeding myself dry to keep them comfortable. And now, watching her words pile up in my phone, I felt nothing but cold clarity. A week later, I drove past their neighborhood on my way to a client meeting. My hands tightened on the steering wheel when I saw it, a foreclosure notice taped to the front door, and a for sale by owner sign staked in the lawn I'd mowed as a teenager. Through the front window, I saw movement. Then suddenly, Mom appeared. She spotted my car and ran outside, waving her arms like she could stop time. I didn't slow down. In my rearview mirror, I saw her sink to her knees on the grass, sobbing into her hands. Once, that sight would have gutted me. Once, I would have pulled over, rushed to her side, promised I'd fix everything. But that version of me didn't exist anymore. They lost the house within the month. Word traveled through the family grapevine. They'd downsized into a cramped one-bedroom apartment across town. Dad picked up shifts at a grocery store. Mom was working at a call center, taking complaint calls all day. The very life she used to sneer at, the ordinary, low-class existence, was now hers. They invited me to Christmas dinner in their new apartment. I had other plans. Some people would say I went too far, that I should have forgiven them, been the bigger person, extended one last branch. But they hadn't lived in my skin. They hadn't felt the crushing weight of watching their entire adulthood sacrificed at the altar of someone else's entitlement. They hadn't endured the constant criticism, the manipulation, the dismissal of every dream, every relationship, every piece of peace I tried to build. Forgiveness isn't a free pass. It's a privilege, and my parents had burned through that privilege a long time ago. Meanwhile, my life blossomed in ways I hadn't thought possible. Daniel and I found our way back to each other once I was no longer drowning in debt. He told me he'd barely recognized the version of me who had carried all that weight. You finally look free, he said, and for the first time, I believed him. We got engaged last fall. I bought my own house, a modest but beautiful 2-bedroom with a little garden I fill with wildflowers every spring. Every night, I sleep peacefully, knowing the roof over my head is mine and mine alone. On my birthday, a card arrived in the mail with Mom's handwriting on the envelope. I didn't open it. I didn't need to. I already knew what it would say. I'm sorry. Please forgive me. I love you. I dropped it straight into the trash. Some bridges deserve to stay burned. Some lessons can only be learned through consequences. My parents taught me that. And I taught myself something, too, that family doesn't give anyone the right to turn you into a doormat. That self-respect is worth more than obligation. In the end, I traded 150 years of sleepless nights and a house I never owned for freedom, peace, and a life that finally feels like mine. Best trade I've ever made.